Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to show you all the books that I plan to read in fall. So this is a seasonal TBR for October, November and December. If you're wondering why seasonal TBRs, because I used to do monthly TBRs. Well, in my last video where I talk about the break that I took from BookTube, why I took that break and what that means for the channel, I did discuss that for now at least I am going to go with seasonal TBRs because this leaves open some more room for mood reading and just to go back and forth and switch the order of the books and how I am reading them. So this is just the safest option for now. I'm not saying that I will never go back to monthly TBRs, especially when I get back in the saddle a little bit more. I do think that I will switch back, but for now it's seasonal TBRs. And I do have a list here of 15 books in total. Now, before the reading slump, I read between 5 and sometimes even 9 books per month. So 15 books for 3 months is definitely the lower limit. So I do think that this should be possible and that this also leaves room to add books that are not on the list. But we will have to see if that is actually true. Now, because I am coming out of a reading slump, these are either standalones or books that are part of series that I already started. So none of these are starts of new series, and I do think that this is the safest option. Now, without further ado, let's just get into it. And the first book that I have here is Blood of Dragons by Robin Hobb. This is the fourth and final book in the Rainwild Chronicles, which is the fourth sub-series in the realm of the Elderlings. So once I finish this one, and I will be listening to this one on audiobook because I've listened to all Robin Hobb's books on audiobook at this point and I'm really enjoying them, then I will be done with this sub-series, and then I only have one more left. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not going to jump into that final series, maybe sometime in fall. It could happen, but for now, it's not in the plans, because I'm also a little bit afraid to finally let go of the realm of the Elderlings and to read the ending, which I think will break my heart. Quite probably. But this series so far is a little bit more lighthearted. It's not as heavy as Fitz's storyline. So I'm just very excited to finally read this final book. So an audiobook that will be happening quite soon. I have a couple of audiobooks that I'm now finally wrapping up, and then this one will be the next. Now, in that last video, I also talked about read-alongs and buddy reads, and that I really need to learn to say no, because I love buddy reads, I love read-alongs, but sometimes I just don't have the time. And this is something that in time, again, I definitely want to be a part of that more and partake in that again. But for now, I just need to take it slow. However, there is one read-along that I am going to continue together with Steve and Jose, and that is the read-along of the First Law Universe by Joe Abercrombie. This is the first book in the Age of Madness trilogy, A Little Hatred, and we will be reading this book in October, then the second book, which I think is A Trouble with Peace, in November, and then the final book in December. So we will be reading these 3 books, so the entire trilogy. You could say that this might be the start of a new series, but since I've read the original First Law trilogy and all of the standalones already, I am more looking at this as a continuation. And I'm very happy that even though I am slowing down with the read-alongs, I still have this buddy read planned with 2 amazing people, and we will definitely be having a spoiler-filled discussion for each of these books as well. And that will also be an audiobook, by the way, because I absolutely adore how Stephen Pacey does this, and it just increases my enjoyment of the series as a whole. Don't really know what's happening here, because I do think that we will be getting people of a different generation in this new trilogy, but I have high hopes. Now, another audiobook. It seems like I have stacked it this way, that we first go through a couple of the audiobooks and then go through physical reads. This is a question mark at this point, but that is The Veiled Throne by Ken Liu. This is the 3rd book of the Dandelion Dynasty. I read the first 2 and absolutely adored them. The first one was in my top 10 books of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and then I read the second one, Wall of Storms, a couple of months ago, and it was even better. It blew me away. However, this is a pretty dense series, and that means that I don't want to pause it for too long, because then you forget important things. But on the other hand, I don't really know if Reading Slump B is ready for this 3rd book. So this is on the list because I want to continue, because I love this series, and because I also think that I am crawling out of my reading slump. So in November, December, it should be fine to pick this one up. And I've listened to the first 2 as an audiobook. I think that went well, especially the second one. The first one was very difficult to get into it as an audiobook because there are so many different characters, but the second one went fine, and I do really enjoy this narrator as well, so I think that the 3rd one will be fine as well. It is 1,000 pages, so it's a pretty big book, but I think that I will be able to tackle this one. And if not, if I still feel too slumpy to get into a dense book, then this will just be postponed until winter, but like I said, I'm hopeful. Now, I also added a couple of standalones. As I said before, all of these are part of series, but now we get into the standalones. And the first one that I have here is The Book of Atrix Wolf by Patricia A. McKillop. Now, I don't really know a lot about this other than that the cover in itself screams fall. And I've actually read 2 Patricia A. McKillop books before. I read The Forgotten Beasts of Eld and The Alphabet of Thorn. And I really enjoyed those, especially Alphabet of Thorn, I thought was amazing. Now, Patricia A. McKillop writes a lot of original fairy tales. This is another one. These are very quick, fast reads that just let you escape this world, which is something that I absolutely adore when it comes to fairy tales. And fast, I really mean fast. Like, this one is 230 pages, so a perfect book if you're a little bit in a slump, if you want to have just a fast read that you can read maybe over the course of a weekend. So this is one that I have in the pile that I can read whenever, maybe in between 2 bigger books of a series. Another standalone that I have very high hopes for, and that is Deerskin by Robin McKinley. Now, this is definitely an older fantasy book, and that also feels a little bit fitting for fall. I don't know why, but I have the feeling of nostalgia, and older fantasy works, they just have a certain feeling to them. Now, this is a standalone, and in this one we follow a princess who, on the evening of her 16th birthday, I think, gets raped by her father because she resembles her mother that much, and I think that her mother is deceased. Now, however, this is, of course, quite gruesome, very emotional, and this leads her to leave the castle and to run away the day after together with her dog, so her companion. I absolutely love emotional reads. I do think that this will be a hard read, but I also love animal companions, and I have a feeling that this might be a little bit of a fairy tale in itself, with a princess who runs away with her animal companion. So I have high hopes that in the end she will have a good ending. I do hope so. But it feels like the type of story that I will adore. So another standalone that I can just read whenever I am in the mood to not be too committed to a very long book or series. And then another standalone. Now we get into the standalones. This is an author that I've heard time and time again that if you love Robin Hobb, you're going to love Guy Gabriel Kay. Now, I don't think that this is per se the best book to start with if you want to get into his works, but this is the one that I own, so this is the one that I'm going to go with. And that is A Brightness Long Ago. I actually just bought this because I absolutely love the title. This is a standalone, but I think that you have a trilogy of standalones, and this one fits in that trilogy because they take place in the same world, if I'm not mistaken. You do have a couple of different characters. You have a courtier, a scholar, a female assassin, a tyrannic ruler, and 2 larger-than-life war leaders. I think that this is set in a Venetian-type setting, and that the world's survival is in the balance. I have no idea what to expect, but if it has a similar quality to it than Robin Hobb's works, I do hope that that means that I will love it, because after I finish Realm of the Elderling, I need to have a replacement for Robin Hobb so that I don't get too homesick, so to speak. So yes, one that I have high hopes for and will hopefully love. Next up, I have a very big standalone, although I do think that there is a prequel coming out next year, but it is a standalone that I don't have that high hopes for because I tried it and I DNF'd it a couple of years ago. But I want to give it a final chance. And that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Now, this one has dragons, that's all I know. I know that a lot of people put this on their summer TBR because they say that it reminds them of summer. Somehow, this reminds me of fall. I think that it's because of the color, because it's yellow-orange, the front of the book, and also because I think the first time that I tried it, it was fall. Now, I didn't read too much. I read 60 pages of an 800-page book, so I didn't get far. But I want to give it a final chance because I think about this book now and then, and I don't really know why I DNF'd it exactly, because when I think about the parts that I have read up until this point, I don't really think that they were that bad. So I think that it was a case of I wasn't really in the mood for this book at that time. So I'm going to give it one more chance. So this might be a book that takes me a long time if I really enjoy it, because 800 pages, hello. Or this might be one that I DNF quite quickly because I realize that I'm no longer in the mood for it. We will see. It can go either way, but at the very least I want to give it a try and then decide whether or not I want to keep it on the shelves. Then a book that is a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I actually bought it, I think, last year around this time period, because October, spooky season, all of that stuff, and I saw a lot of dark academia vlogs from other booktubers, and I really wanted to give this one a try. And that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I do think that this is the first one in a series, and that at this point we don't really know when the second one is coming out. This is a dark academia book, so it takes place at a university, I think. There are strange things happening. I don't know a lot, but I do know that I want to give this a try in October. And being in a reading slump, I actually do like to add some non-fantasy books, or I think that this is fantasy, but it's not traditional fantasy, it's not medieval inspired. I think that it takes place in modern times, so it's different than what I normally read, and sometimes you need that. So I do hope that I will love it, but again, this is one that I just want to give a try when I'm in the mood, when it's October, almost Halloween. But if I don't like it, I will DNF it, because I don't have time to struggle through a book that I don't like. Next up. Another one that I need to be in the mood for. So this is probably the most dense book that I have on the list, but I wanted to include it because this is a series that I have absolutely adored up until this point. And that is Beneath the Twisted Trees by Bradley Pete Bolio. So this is the 4th book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series by this author. I think there are 6 books in total. I've read the first 3 and I absolutely love them. In this one we follow Cheda. Cheda is on a revenge quest against 12 immortal kings of Sharakai, which is a desert city. But there are also some gods, there is interference. It's a lot. You have a lot of political intrigue, you have a lot of players on the board, and I absolutely adore this series. But it's a lot, so I want to continue. I also don't want to have too much time in between, but at the same time, this is in case that I am completely out of the reading slump. So I think that this will be closer to December, when we have the holidays, when I have time on my hands to really get into this book. This is also one where I don't have the audiobook, so I will be reading this one physically. All of the books that I have discussed lately will be read physically. So yeah, one probably for December. Also, not the book that you think about when you think about fall season, because desert-based, but who cares? I'm not going to wait another year to pick up the next book in this amazing series. Same can be said for the next book, actually, because this is in a Venetian-inspired city. This is the sequel of a book that I read last winter and really enjoyed, so maybe that's why I keep thinking about this for the colder season. And that is Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick. This is an author duo, and if I'm not mistaken, they are working on the 3rd and final book, and it will be released next year. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. The first one in this series, I don't really know what it's called anymore, but it was the first one of the Rook and Rose trilogy. This is the second one, and you have a Zorro type character, you have a lot of intrigue, you have a lot of familial troubles in the family, let's just call it that, and I absolutely adored it. Now, this is one that a lot of people might say is dense, but I didn't think that, because when I think back of the first book, I remember everything that happened. So I think that that's a good sign that I really enjoyed it and that I will be able to get into the second book straight away. This is actually one that I think I will be picking up soon, because just holding it in my hands, I think that this is also one that I recently bought, like last month. So this is also a small book haul. Hello. And this is just one that I think will really help me to get into a big book, because it is 600 pages, but one that you can really fly through, so to speak. Then we have another one that is a little bit different from what I normally read. I do think that this is historical fiction with maybe small fantastical elements in it, but not a true fantasy. Not entirely sure, but I think so. And that is Cunning Women by Elizabeth Lee. This is a standalone, take place in Lancashire of the 17th century, and we are following witches. Now, we are following one witch in particular. She lives at the edge of the city together with her mother. Her mother is deemed to be a witch, so that's why they are outcasts. But the village still, I think that they still interact with them and they still use them for potions and stuff like that, but there's like a very strange balance. But then the witch hunts start, and I think that the 17th century, especially Lancashire, this was a very difficult topic at that time. So I think that this will be a very emotional read. I don't really know if there will be fantastical elements, because you could go that way with witches, but it could also be that these are completely normal people and that we are reading historical fantasy. So don't know what it is exactly, but it's definitely a fall read, and I do think that it will be a little bit emotional, because if I'm not mistaken, the girl in the book is 16-ish years old, and she's also in love with a boy from that village. So I don't think that that will have a happy ending, but not entirely sure. And then a book that I don't really know if it feels fall, but it's Juliette Marillier, and I haven't picked up a Juliette Marillier book in a very long time, and books are falling here. And it is one of my favorite authors, so of course she needed to make the list. And that is with Sybils Secret by Juliette Marillier. This is the second book in the Wildwood duology. The first book is Wildwood Dancing. This is a YA duology, and I absolutely love the first book. The font is absolutely massive, and it's 300-ish pages. So I do think that this is one that I will fly through. Now, the first one is actually a fairy tale retelling of the 12 Dancing Sisters, but it had some darker elements with vampires. So I just thought of that book as a fall-related book. And I do think that the second one, it follows another sister in this family, might also be a little bit fall-related, but the cover in itself, which is one of the most beautiful covers that I've ever seen, by the way, it feels a little bit spring. But I don't mind. Juliette Merlier, I'm not going to be difficult. Now, another one that I actually have on my e-reader, so I don't have the physical copy yet, and that is Epilogues for Lost Gods by Kat Rector. This is the second book in her duology. The first book was The Goddess of Nothing at All. Now, The Goddess of Nothing at All, I got last year. I won the ARC for it. I read it, absolutely adored it, and I loved it so much that I actually bought a physical copy, which you can see here. And now this one I got as an ARC from the author. I can't wait to read this. I will be reading this quite soon, and I think that I will review the duology because I definitely think that more people, especially if you love Norse mythology, you really need to pick up this duology. There's also a collection of short stories in this world that I also have an ARC for, so I will probably be reading these too, even though I don't love short stories. For this duology, I am going to make an exception because it really is superb. If you love Norse mythology, pick it up please, or wait for my review and then decide that you really do need to pick it up. Then, those are all 15 books, but if I DNF some of these, or if I decide that some of these are too dense for the moment and I pause them, I do have a 16 book that I want to discuss, but I don't own it yet. But I do think that I will be buying it quite soon, and that is a new release, and it's called The Witch and the Tsar by, I want to say Olyenka, but at the very least the last name is Gilmore. This is a standalone, it's a folklore retelling, it has Baba Yaga, it has the Tsar, it's Russian folklore of course, and it sounds like something that I will absolutely love. So I'm definitely going to give this one a chance. It's also not a very thick book. I do have some smaller books on the list here, so that's why I decided that it was okay to add a 16 book to the list. But it's a little bit cheating. These 15 and maybe that 16 book. So these are all of the books that I have on my TBR until the end of the year. I do hope that I can get to most of them. Please let me know if you have a seasonal TBR, if you have a spooky book that you want to read in October, or if you're just going to see how it goes. Let me know in the comments down below. And also, of course, if you've read any of these books and you want to let me know how you felt about them, you can let me know as well. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye!